So, welcome everyone. My name is Dundrup. I'm the SPC here at Tupton Norboling. So, I just wanted to take a brief moment to welcome Karuna back to our virtual Gompa. We still haven't been able to get Karuna into our physical Gompa
Not for a
since
few
we
years.
reopened. That's very high on my list of things to accomplish. Hasn't the karma hasn't ripened yet, but I haven't given up hope. Um, Karuna has been an invaluable part, though, of our faculty. He was one of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's original students back in the 70s, spent over 10 years at Kopan Monastery in Nepal, has been a practicing Buddhist for over 45 years, is a member of the board of FPMT, and as I say, has for many years been an invaluable part of our online faculty, is always willing to try to make time for us when we request his wonderful teaching. So I'm grateful that Karuna was able to accept another invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Some of you I know from before, and some of you, what do they say? What's that say? You have friends and then friends you haven't met yet. That's all. So, thank you, Dunbala, for the introduction. Um, I think it's been a few years partly because since Lama Zopa Rinpoche passed away in April 2023, I've been working pretty vigorously. As Junwala mentioned, I'm on the FPMT board, whatever that, if you know what that means. And so we're in a really challenging but exciting transition in the organization of which we're of Tutan Norberling as one of our 132 centers plus projects, hospices. What else we got? Schools, old folks' homes, statues, all kinds of amazing projects. So if you don't know about the FPMT, you're welcome to go look at the website or ask me. Generally speaking, I do like to teach. Dundra said I was a practicing Buddhist, but I guess practicing is the right word. Right? I mean, I have friends who say, I play golf. So then if I get angry, they say, "Oh, I thought you were a Buddhist. What are you getting angry about?" Something, right? Anyone else get that accusation leveled at them? So I always say, no, I'm a practicing Buddhist. So much better answer, right? So the style now, actually, I mean, I'm curious, how many are of you are actually involved in the whole Discovering Buddhism program, wanting to complete the program, get your certificate? Are there people here? One, two, three of us? Okay, good. And so this module, Samsara and Nirvana, I think it's a later one, right? I think it's the 11th one or something like that. Yeah, so I think that,
The
what was that?
ninth one.
Ninth one. So you've been through a lot, and my style also is I do like to have some interaction, so you'll be free to unmute if you want. Um, I think that through people's questions and discussion, I think we tend to learn a lot. I don't know what you think, but my history, of course, as Dundut said, I went to Nepal in 1975 as a 21-year-old and left in 1988. So I did have the great honor of serving Lama Yeshe for nine of those years until he passed away in 1984. So I like to I think that you know I think these teachings are sometimes not, how to say this. Sometimes they're presented too academically. Do other people find that? Maybe your word would not be too academically, but the point of these teachings, all that we are doing, and I would love you to uh, you know, share your thoughts and maybe some quandaries you have about all the teachings, everything from the very first teaching that Buddha gave until the end, and all the commentaries are really designed for practice. Okay, so I know that I'm going to generalize, but generally speaking, in this modern world of ours, we are very familiar with academic study, aren't we? We go to school for a long time, anywhere from, I don't know, 12 years to 30 years. So we're pretty, I think we're compared to what I was seeing like in more traditional cultures like Nepal and India, in other cultures where academia study was not so imbued in the culture. So in Tibet, where these teachings, well, the teaching, of course, came from Buddha in India, but the format that we're teaching from, a lot of it is from the Tibetan tradition, and we're a Tibetan tradition organization and center, which just means the teachings are presented in the way they evolved in the Tibetan tradition. There's other traditions, there's other traditions like, the Burmese tradition or the Japanese tradition or Sri Lankan, and they all have a different flavor. Same teachings, same teachings except for the fact that there's emphasis. Okay, so different cultures and different countries have emphasized different parts of Buddhist teachings, and in generally, all the teachings are designed to attain a state of liberation or enlightenment. In general, they are, as divided into two kind of trends. One is in terms of the Southern school or the fundamentalist school or the Hinayana, you might call, and then there's the Mahayana or the great school or the great path. And of course, Tibetan Buddhism follows the tradition of the Mahayana. Um, so it's just a lot of has to do with emphasis and personality, culture. And so these teachings, for example, on samsara and nirvana, do fall within both trends of the fundamentalist school and the Mahayana or the Great School. And but most of the texts that we use and the commentaries we use will follow from the Tibetan tradition of commentaries. Um, I have a feeling that much of what you've done up to now is quite incorporated within this module of Samsara Nirvana. Dunjula, would you say like what is I think this module is maybe a little more detail in what you've already encountered, but I'm not really sure because I haven't taught all the other modules. And so this one, I think, Samsara Nirvana is a good way to incorporate and put together maybe the different teachings and different classes that you've participated in. And I'm going to try to stay true to the intent of this module, but I don't think I'm exactly, I will cover the material for those people who are wanting to get the certificate. I think you have to do some quizzes or tests, which Dundubla will provide to you. I'm not going to provide those. But I would like to, of course, discuss them. When are those quizzes, how often are they given in the class, during the
So there's
class?
just one at the very end.
Uh-huh. Okay. And we also have sort of a truncated schedule, don't we? Because
It's
often this
5 weeks. Yeah.
5 weeks, and this is often 10 weeks.
We usually do the 6 weeks for every
Is it?
module.
Oh, okay. So if I speak 1/5 faster, we can cover that last class. All right. But I won't do that. Um, okay. So to begin with, any questions for me? Anything you want to know about my background? Maybe I should just tell you a little bit because I think it's important. I feel it's very, very important to understand the context or background from which someone is given the function of teaching. So if you don't mind, indulge me just a few minutes. I'd like to share with you a few minutes about where I put all this together or what my journey has been like. As I mentioned, I was kind of from the hippie generation, and was growing up outside LA, so lots of drugs and psychedelics and all those things. And when I was about 17, I just got tired of all that stuff, and I found myself getting very interested in meditation, but I couldn't find any meditation teachers. And then I stumbled upon the Hindu tradition was was starting to become more popular because of, the Beatles and then Woodstock with Satchidananda, and it just became sort of a renaissance. And so I got very involved in yoga and Hinduism, and I was follower of that tradition for about 3 years. And I did become somewhat disillusioned with it, but I got involved with that because I was interested in meditation, and I did learn that form of meditation. And the reason I got disillusioned is that what was happening for me in terms of my gurus of the time, Satchidananda and another Indian uh, teacher, was I think probably what I was looking for in meditation was a different kind of high. I have to be honest, psychedelics and weed, all those things just weren't working for me anymore. So probably my motivation, what I've always noticed that at the end of that era of my life, that whenever I would get high, I would come down again. And this became an overarching pattern. What happened for me so then I got involved with the Hindu tradition looking for something that was more lasting. And I didn't really find it there. What I did find is a lot of their, anyone else have any experience with the Hindu tradition, the yoga tradition, of meditation, like Kundalini yoga and those kinds of things? Anybody? Yeah, I think 30, 40 years ago you would have. But today it's very easy to access Buddhist teachings. In those days I accessed the Buddhist teachings through the Hindu, but there wasn't really any Buddhists to speak of, really any formal teachings going on. And then Chogyam Trungpa started teaching around a little bit later in that era. He was sort of the pioneer, I think. Um, when I got involved in the Hindu tradition, I had the same experience that my meditations would be maybe quite exalted and quite profound, but then I would come down and come down. So, so I actually became sort of disillusioned, and but I was interested in Eastern thought, and I was interested in meditation, but there was no access to Buddhism. And I was at college, and there was a year in Nepal program, a year abroad, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do that, but I'm not. And so I did join that program. And the idea then was I would do a comparison study of Hinduism in Nepal, which was a Hindu kingdom, and Hinduism that was sort of developing in the United States. And so, as a result of that, I was in Nepal, studying intensive Nepali language and living in a village with a Brahmin family. And I was getting way, way behind in my research project because I was so enthused with the culture and everything I was learning. I could care less about, my research project. I was 21. And getting late in that and getting a bit, what to say, kind of getting concerned. And my advisors were concerned that I hadn't started my research project. And about a mile from the village I was living in on this hill was this monastery called Kopan. And I was told in those days, if you wanted to study Buddhism, your only choices in English was at Kopan or in Dharamsala, India, where His Holiness is resettled, Tibetan government exile, and a lot of monasteries. So I went to Copan. I didn't really want to do the 1 month course, which still exists today. I don't know. It's like the 53rd is going to be this year or 55th, something like that. I was at the eighth one. And I didn't want to go because I felt this is going to be full of tourists. And, I'm Nepali, like authentic, and I don't want to, I was sort of immersed in the culture and the language. But luckily I did go. And so that 1 month course, of course, transformed my life. And with the background in Hinduism and the background of feeling sort of disappointed, very quickly during that meditation course, it became clear to me because of the profound presence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe that these were two beings that embodied what they were teaching. And so it was very experiential. And I think that's what began to transform for me. So, yes, I also like that it's very profound and deep and academic. I like that part. I think we all do. Yeah, but there was this quality of meditation and experience. And one of the things that we have to know about the traditional Tibetan monasteries, where the monks in our tradition go through 21 years or more of study, very rigorous, is they don't meditate a lot in the technical sense or in the traditional sense. They actually spend most of their time studying. Then once they achieve a certain level of mastery over the topic, then they might start meditating, or they might not. They may just be professors or academics, or the or teachers. But the actual experiential part of it uh, is sort of done differently in that tradition. Lama Yeshe was so insightful that he could see that for Westerners, they already had studied. They had so much intellectual knowledge outside of Buddhism, but they brought an intellectual rigor to what they did. So he felt that the Westerners, I'm using Westerners in a very loose sense, the Westerners or the modern people, who were Westerners in those days, um, would would sort of get captured by the intellectual and the academics because that's what was familiar, right? And that being familiar, Lama would look and say, yeah, but I don't think that he used to say, I don't think they're really touching the teachings. And so he was pretty disciplined with his students to not overstudy and would put them into meditation situations that the Tibetan tradition might not ever experience. The monks would never do the kinds of retreats that we were doing. And Lama got criticized for that by the Tibetans sometimes because they felt, how can you have these people doing these profound retreats or meditation sessions or practices when they don't have the intellectual background? But Lama felt you should do both. Does that make sense? All that. So what you see in these centers like Thupten Ling is, the experiential meditative aspect is very strong, but I think in a traditional sense, you might not have seen that if it wasn't for Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa knowing what modern people were facing. So that was so just to conclude on my biography is that I spent 9 years working under Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, well, particularly Lama Yeshe in those days. And then I returned to the States later and at Rinpoche's suggestion, got a master's degree in clinical psychology, which is the perfect fit, I think, in my opinion, for a Buddhist who is sort of convinced that Buddhist teachings are, profound and sort of the answer or truthful. If you want to find a way to share those ideas or expand on those ideas, psychology is one area, I think, and we've seen that now. Now, it's quite a trend that Buddhists are interacting with psychology and neuroscience and that sort of thing. So when we talk about this topic of samsara and nirvana, I hope that what we can do is that we can talk about the fact that we're talking about the mind, okay? We're talking about a way of personal development. Does that make sense? I think it must, I'm sure. Okay, thank you. And like I said, you can, if you have something come up, just let me know. Just raise your hand or unmute and whatnot. With respect to this module now, what we're looking at in samsara and nirvana is, first of all, we have to be clear that we know what it is that we're talking about. And as you have probably discovered, which I think is a great quality of the Tibetan Buddhists, or maybe the Buddhist path, and particularly the path, particularly, well, both in meditation, but also in intellectual rigor, is that all essential terms have a definition. Have you found that in your other classes? Because, for example, just to take a general one, we all talk about love. I really like love you, and all you need is love, and we could choose any philosophical topic, but that one's kind of easy. But when you really have, if you having studied these teachings, you probably have the definition of love. You probably know what it is according to but we talk about the love you have for your partner, or love you have for your kids, or love you have for your country. So, um, it's kind of important for the Buddhist tradition. Before you can have a discussion about love of your country or love of your partner, we would need to define the term because what I'm talking about may not be what you're talking about, or my understanding of the topic may not be your understanding of the topic. So everything needs to be defined so that we know we're talking about the same thing. There may be other definitions. It doesn't mean there's only one right one. It just means it's the one that we need to be able to dive deeper into these teachings and then to bring into your meditation. So if one doesn't know the definition of say permanence and impermanence, when we say permanence in sort of common colloquial language, uh, generally speaking, when we talk about, have you noticed that when people talk about permanence, they tend to mean eternal, something that's eternal. That's not the definition, right? Do people know the definition of permanence and impermanence? I could give you an example. We can do the quiz right now. Who knows the definition of impermanence and permanence? I won't put you on this. I won't call you out by name. Don't worry. Gotta remember, I hated school. Huh?
Impermanence, and I believe impermanence means that it's something that um, doesn't last forever. Something that's it's not going to continue on in the timeline for eons.
Okay. Um, what about the sun? The sun. It lasts for eons. Is it permanent?
Mostly, but not in the same
Impermanent.
state.
Most, not, say it again, sorry. Say it again.
Sorry, there's a lot of noise in the background. Mostly, but it's not in the same state. It changes from moment to moment. The structure
Oh,
changes, yeah. But
there's
it's
the
still
definition.
there.
There's the definition. That's actually not the definition, but we'll say the definition is anything that changes moment to moment. The actual definition is that anything that's produced. And we don't mean produced like producing a computer or something. Anything that is a product, right? So what that entails, for something to be produced, it has to have a cause and an effect. The effect is the production, is the product. So the sun is a product, right? It's a product. If we go back millions and billions of years, then it's a product of the gases coming together. I don't know how sun is formed, by the way. And then, but not only that, but as you were saying, it also is in the state of change, okay, of changing moment to moment. Now, something that I think is not common to us without thinking about it is if I asked you, is your house permanent or impermanent? What would you say?
I would say it's impermanent. It's changing.
Okay, so
Um,
right. So
yeah.
we have what's called gross impermanence and subtle impermanence. So typically in this culture, if you ask someone that, they'll say, well, yeah, but my house will last 50 years and then it'll be destroyed. So that's kind of the understanding of impermanence, right? And typically. And but as you were saying, for something to change in 50 years, and this is what I never thought of until it was presented, for something to change and be destroyed in 50 years, it has to be changing moment to moment as well. So that's impermanence. Permanence, anything permanent is something that's not produced. It's not a product. Does that mean that to exist, for something to exist, it has to be impermanent? Because it has to be produced?
I'm going to take a shot at this.
Sure.
The mind is not produced. It just came into being, correct?
Well,
So it is not a product.
if it came into being, it's interesting, notice the language. If it came into being, that means it was produced.
But it
Actually,
But did it come? It just suddenly. Oh, I'm gonna get myself caught up in
No,
this
no, no.
one.
I want you to do it. Don't be afraid.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at some point, everything just began. So it wasn't produced; it's just always existed.
So if it began, it didn't exist before it began, right?
But was there a beginning?
Ah,
You know.
okay. Right. Okay, and that's a segue for me. Thank you, Robert. Just give me a second. I'm gonna. Okay. I'm gonna share with you. Can you see that? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This might be the wrong one, actually. Okay. Give me a second. I have two different, well, I have many, millions, but okay. Sorry, wrong show. Let me go off share for just a second. Oh wait, hang on. Oh, didn't change. Huh. Let me get rid of this. Okay. Okay. Technology is not always that efficient. Oh, did I lose you? Uh, I think I lost you. Sorry.
Try and find the
Oh, you are there.
Zoom.
You
Well,
are
you're
there.
here. Yeah,
Okay.
try and find the Zoom
There
button
you are.
or the
Thank,
Zoom.
thank you. You're back. Does that come up? Okay, good. Okay.
Yes.
So let me, so this is the foundation of Buddhism, right? Everything has mind in the lead, has mind in the forefront, is made by mind. I mean, we will analyze this, but we won't do it piece by piece. So if one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, misery will follow, as the wheel of a cart follows the foot of the ox. Okay. Um, so Buddhism really is mind science. So that means the science of the mind. And as Robert, we're getting in the discussion, we better get clear on our terms, right? We have to get clear on what is mind. We can't just say mind science. Lama Yeshe, this quote from Lama Yeshe says, of course, the human mind has both positive and negative sides, but the negative is transient. Okay, this is very important, going back to our discussion. Very temporary. Your up and down emotions are like clouds in the sky. Beyond them, the real basic human nature is clear and pure. That itself is really also captures what we're doing with these teachings is we are in the up and down emotions. We're in the clouds. Okay? But beyond them, we're not in touch with the real basic human nature, which is clear and pure. Okay, when it says human nature, what Lama is saying here is the mind itself. He used the word human nature. Okay? So when we talk about this, so the definition of mind, everyone, have you had this definition before? How many say yes? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Some have, most have. Okay. So we're going to go back to the discussion with Robert in just a second. This is what I have up here is not the definition of mind. Okay, the first two bullet points are the actual definition of mind that's used in the debate manuals and used in the study. It's clear, okay, and it cognizes. Forget the other three for a moment, okay? So clear, now, is space clear? We can take a vote. Is space clear? Okay. How many say let's see. How many say yes? Put your thumb up. Thumb up. Matt, you're just unclear. Are you you're an up. Okay. Zayla, up or down? Flat. Oh, sideways. Okay, that's fair enough. Mary Jo, she's saying down. Okay, and mine is not clear. Cynthia, clear?
It is it
Is space
is
clear, I mean?
not. It is not.
Okay, space is
It
not
is
clear according to
empty. Yeah.
is what? Empty. Is
It-
empty clear
it-
or not clear?
Empty is lacking something.
Right. But is space, do you think, then clear or not clear?
No.
No. Okay. William? Or William says clear. Okay. Karuna, Bella and Michael are hiding. That's no fair. Okay. Bella says it's not clear. Michael, you can use your little emoji thing if you figure out where it is. Okay. So, well, to be simple about it, if space was not clear, what is it? So space here, let's say I'm actually in a hotel room because I'm traveling, but let's say the space between your computer screen and you, that's called space. Is it clear or not? What's the definition of space? I told you everything has a
Really,
definition.
I think it depends upon the view. Whether you're
Really?
looking at
Oh.
space from like 32,000 feet, or if you're looking at on the micro level.
Uh-huh. So, do
It's
you mind if I
it's
keep?
lack of something.
It's
It's the negative of having something there.
correct. The
It's
definite. Sorry, go ahead.
it's just lack of form, right?
Correct.
And if it doesn't have form, it can't be no physical. It can't be not it it's not it's gonna be empty, but that's a physical form, a characteristic of a form, wouldn't it? The negative of it.
Yep. So we're going to have definitions. You might want to write these down so that the next guy who comes along or woman comes along can't trick you. The definition of space, yes, there's a definition, is that which does not obstruct. Think about that for a moment. The chair is not space because it obstructs, right? You're now, but between you and the chair is space. There's no obstruction, correct? That's why you can walk to the chair. Now, going to the micro level, yes, there are atoms between me and the chair. There are molecules, there are atoms, and so on, right? But just to cut to the chase, there could not be any atoms moving around or molecules if there was no space. And physics tells us between molecules and atoms, there's space, right? Otherwise, it couldn't move. If there's no space, there's no movement, correct? Okay, so this is just not intellectual. I mean, I love this stuff, right? But this is important. Because and this applies to our module here in Samsara and Nirvana, everything that exists, and there's a few exceptions, but they're not important. Really, they're not now, is either space or an obstructive thing. Okay. So, as Robert was alluding to, I think, Robert, was that you could say that there's just two, I'm going to get more detailed later, but for the sake of our talk tonight, there's just two things. There's form and there's space. Okay? Now, don't hang on to that too literally, but that's a good way to think of it because I think mostly that's true. Now, what we have to then look at is what's the definition of form and all that kind of thing, right? Now, go back. Now, this is very important because let's look at our definition again. Don't, just the first two. Clear. So space is clear. So is space the same as mind? It's not, because the other quality of a mind, it is clear. It is formless, okay? Like space. Space also is formless. It doesn't have any obstructive quality to it. If something is form, it obstructs. So a molecule is form because it obstructs, right? Another molecule can't go into that other molecule. And I'm not talking about nuclear fission, all those. Forget that, okay? Just we don't want to get too I don't know, too picky. You just got to use just in the sense that where there's one form, if another form goes into it, then that other form either transmutes or changes, but it's still form. And excuse me. Now, space, which is clear, and the mind is clear. Okay? We're on the same page, right? But the mind, to be a mind, you also have to be able to, you also cognize things. You know them. And the best way to, for me personally, when this became clearest for me was not that long ago, which was that a mind experiences things. Okay? When you say cognize, I like the word experience. It just feels sort of more real to me. An experience. Space does not experience things. Things happen in space, but there's no cognition. There's no knower. So the difference between space and mind is a big thing. It's that quality of cognition. Okay? Now, it just so happens, this is not the definition, but it just so happens that the mind, like space, is formless. So it doesn't obstruct. The mind does not obstruct anything. And in theory, right, the mind that you have and I have is not, since it's not form, it's not the body. Body is form. Arms, legs, intestines, teeth, eyeballs, toes. That's the body, and that is form, right? So one way when we meditate on the nature of the mind, we can eliminate the body as the mind simply by the fact that by definition, they're different. But that's a meditation that's very worthwhile doing because we shouldn't just accept it because when you stub your toe, you say, ouch, right? And what do we say? I stubbed my toe. And we identify the toe as the mind, as me. Okay, that's just one of the countless wrong concepts we have. That's a natural perception, by the way. And that's what we're talking about, samsara and nirvana. That natural misbelief that the toe is me. If it's not you, you have the ability to develop that so that you stub your toe and actually you don't feel pain. You have sensation, I mean, you don't identify it as me. That pain is me. Um, not promoting my books, but 12, 13 years ago, I wrote a book called The Misleading Mind. And I just finished a second book called Six Myths We Live By, which Wisdom Publications has published and will be on Amazon, I don't know, in a couple weeks. But in The Misleading Mind, I tell the story about one of my Hindu teachers. And he is very, I don't know if many people know his name, Swami Satchidananda. For us older folks, he was the Swami that opened up Woodstock. Do you remember that? Anyone remember? Yeah. And Swami Satchidananda came at the center. I was one of the members of the ashram in Los Angeles, and he came to give a talk, and he came and he talked for, I don't know, 1 or 2 hours, and then took questions and answers. And it was very serene and very peaceful. It was very amazing man. And then left, went up to his room, was escorted by actually his attendant was a friend of mine. And I don't know, a little while later, my friend, whose name was Kevin came down and said, the most amazing thing just happened. When we got back up into Satchidananda's room, I gave him a cup of tea and he sat and was relaxed. Then at one point he said, "Oh, can you look at my foot?" And Kevin looked at his foot and there was a needle in his foot, sewing needle, quite deep in his foot. He said, "Oh yeah, I stepped on it on the way down to the teaching." He is a very advanced meditator. He understood the separation between mind and body. And while of course, he had the sensation, he knew there was something in his foot, he didn't identify it as "I'm in pain." Okay? So that's because of a clear understanding of the nature of how things really are. I mean, I don't know what his attainments were, but he was very advanced, and he had, at the very least, he had discovered that he and his body and his mind were not the same entity. Okay? But funny thing is, they're not separate either. So we'll get to that probably next week. Um, so I wanted to just so to finish the definition because it's important. I believe Robert was saying it had to be something began somewhere, right? There was like whatever Big Bang or the mind started, it had some sort of instant beginning, instant birth, right? That's how we think. The problem is that, well, it is a problem. The mind does not have a beginning. And we just can't wrap our heads around that. We just can't. But we can if you study, you meditate a little, it does logically make sense that the mind cannot have a beginning. And also it's an impermanent phenomena. Unlike space, space is a permanent phenomena. It does not change moment to moment. Things in the space do. The molecules, the stars, the planets, the chairs and the tables in that space, yes, they do move in that space, but the space itself, which actually is not an object of our direct perception, is it? Can you perceive the space between where you're sitting and the whatever table across the room? Can you perceive the space? You can't. You can only infer it, right? I mean, you see something between. I mean, you don't see the thing. It's like Cynthia was saying. It's an absence, right? You can't perceive an absence. That's what's interesting. You can meditate on space. You can meditate on absence, yes, but you can't. It's not actually a perception of it because it doesn't exist that way. So the mind is beginningless. The mind is formless or non-physical, and it changes moment. The mind also changes moment to moment, unlike space, which does not. Okay. Am I lost anybody yet? Is this helpful or not? I don't even know if it's helpful. Okay, because the intent is to be helpful. because of this understanding the mind. Now, if a mind had a beginning, let's go off screen share here for a minute. If the mind had a beginning, we should be able to find that beginning, right? In theory. So this is a very essential part of understanding this topic of samsara and nirvana. One of the qualities of samsara, which just simply means cycling, but the intent behind the word is cycling in a state of dissatisfaction forever, forever from the past, not forever into the future. Because the end of that beginningless cycling, that beginningless up and down, as Lam Yeshe called it, the end of that is what's referred to as liberation or enlightenment. That's the end of that. It does end, but it doesn't have a beginning. If it had a beginning, we have to use our logic. And then later, with your logic, we meditate on this. So it's definitely a meditation to meditate on the beginninglessness of the mind. So why I thought it was important to talk about impermanence and that the definition of something that's produced, mind being a product, right? It's impermanent. It's produced. So the question in modern science and modern people is, well, what produced it? And this is a very, very uncomfortable conversation for everybody, for me, because, well, what produced it? Did it just manifest suddenly? Robert was alluding to that earlier. It just suddenly started, right? But for something to start meant it had a cause. So that cause existed before the first moment of mind. So how was that different than mind itself? How does that make it not beginningless? And when you've done the karma module, Dundabla? Yeah. So you remember in karma, uh, uh, karma is cause and effect. So it's the same thing, production. And for something to be produced, it has to have a similar cause, right? For an oak tree, you cannot grow an oak tree. Uh, you cannot grow an oak tree from a cup, right? It's not a similar cause. You cannot grow an oak tree from a rose seed, okay, or an orange seed, right? Orange seed can only produce an orange tree. Ah, Matt's thinking something. Oh, right. Okay. So, so uh, when we think that the mind just had a sudden beginning, and so it's as if it's not beginningless. This is what modern religion teaches us. I mean, I don't know what originally Christianity taught. We don't really know, or Judaism, we don't really know, right? Or any of these religious traditions, but they all come back to God, pretty much. And if you have a cause like the cause, if you have an effect like a mind, the cause needs to be similar, of the same nature. And clearly, the way God is defined in the religious traditions, I'm being very general right now, is it's not defined as a similarity to a mind or a person. God is liberated. I mean, to speak loosely, God is enlightened. So it hasn't produced a result similar to the cause. Okay. Of course, things can transmute and transition, but if you look closely at them very micro level, it looks like, let's say, when you boil ice, it seems to change, but the change is the nature of the water it becomes is already embedded in the ice itself, isn't it? being water molecules and that sort of thing. And that's sort of a simple description of that. Okay, any question about the mind? So also the mind being beginningless is a plus, because that means, if we take it to logical progression, it means it can transform. If it were permanent, by the way, that's one thing about permanent. Permanent means unchanging. Permanent means stuck. It stays, a permanent thing does not change into something else. For us to become enlightened, or even to develop mindfulness, even develop love and compassion to a degree that we wish to develop, to do that, right, we have to be able to transform the mind. And if the mind were permanent, it couldn't transform. Correct? Can you see how the logic stuff starts to work? Now, the meditation that I hope you'll do, because I probably, I don't know if we can have time today or not, there's a very simple meditation, but very profound. And that is to watch the mind. You've all done this, okay? But now what I would suggest you do is watch as the mind unfolds moment to moment, and watch how the present thought or emotion or feeling arose from the very previous one. Okay. And the mind is transformative. The mind's transformed all the time. The problem is, and this is samsara, the mind transforms into problem after problem. And we'll go into more detail what that means, but it transforms from one emotion to the next emotion, or one feeling to the next feeling. Okay. And because of impermanence, it's very hard to hold on to a good feeling. Now, not impossible, because with meditation, when developing single pointed concentration, you can hold a thought or an emotion or a visualization for a very, very long time, maybe even millions of years. You can. It doesn't mean it's permanent, though. There's still some subtle change going on. Very, 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 very subtle. There's many levels of impermanence. There's the gross impermanence is the one we're talking about, that your house just, falls apart in 50 years, or the seasons change. Okay, though that's considered gross impermanence. Just remember, whenever we see gross impermanence, there has to be subtle impermanence. It's not like the house is permanent, unchanging, and then it gets destroyed. It's not possible. It is in the state of change, even though we don't perceive it. Any questions? I'm talking a lot. Why does someone else talk? Dundrup, can you think of something to say?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just when you say impermanent and permanent, are you using that as similar to the compounded and uncompounded phenomena?
They're
Is
related.
that, but it's not the same?
I don't want to say they're synonyms,
Okay.
but they are the same nature. It's very important. They are the same
Okay.
nature. So compounded phenomena is always impermanent. Okay? Because compounded basically means put together, right? Or in relationship. So anything in relationship is in the nature of change, and anything in relationship can be changed. I mean, I'm maybe generalizing, but I think that's true. Anything that's in relationship can change and does change. Okay, thank you. Uncompounded space is an uncompounded phenomena. Okay, now, well, we're not going to get tonight, but don't mistake that with something that exists by itself. Okay, space is still dependent. It's just not dependent on cause and effect. 99% of everything is dependent on cause and effect. I don't know, 99%. I'm just being loose about it. But there are things that exist that are not compounded, and space is one of them. But it is dependent. It doesn't exist by itself, and that's the central teaching on emptiness, right? When does the emptiness module happen, Dunda? Or has it happened?
I believe it's module 13, the very last one.
Very last. Oh, that's no fair. They should teach it the first time. Get everyone confused. No one will come back. Okay, any other questions? Jai from Australia. I'm surprised you don't have a question.
You know me too well.
Uh-huh.
My apologies for coming in late. And no, I don't have a question. I do, however, agree emptiness should be taught early on. Yeah,
Uh-huh. I think so too.
that's my opinion.
I
That's
think
why.
that's just due to tradition, because in the Tibetan Buddhist curriculum, it doesn't come till later. But like I said in the beginning of the talk, us foreigners are a little bit different. I don't think it should be in the beginning by any means, but maybe not at the end. But it depends. Yeah. I think it's referenced so much during all your modules that it seems that it'd be good to present it, but I don't know where. I think that's
I
up.
mean, I personally find it a very overwhelming concept
It is.
because it undermines all of my basic assumptions that I've had since day one about
Correct.
what's happening in life.
Right.
So it's pretty confronting
It
for
is.
me. And I think for
It is. No, it is very, very much so. I mean, it can be very, I don't know, scary or awe-inspiring. Okay. So, okay. So are we okay with this slide? We're okay so far? I hope it was helpful because that's where we wanted to start. Once the innate definition of mind. And because I don't want Dundup to fire me. I have to follow somewhat of the curriculum. Um, when I was in Nepal the first year and a half, I had a student visa for a year and a half, and in those days, you could only stay 3 months in Nepal. And but I was one of the rare people who had a year and a half visa. And then Lama Yeshe, I asked him when I was leaving to come back to the States to finish my last semester, I asked him, what could I do? What should I do? And he asked me or suggested I come back to Copan and establish a Western Studies program for the monks. Very revolutionary. No monastery had done that yet. So I established an English, social studies, and mathematics program, and I found a master's degree program in the United States that allowed for independent master's study or research. So that's what I did, and then I was able to get another 10 years of visa. So it was very, very tricky. I'm trying to remember why I was going to tell you that story, but now I don't remember. Oh, I know why. So when I came back to the States for that year and a half to start that program and go back to Nepal, I had a master's. I had a No, I apologize. When I came back and settled back in the States 12, 13 years later, because I had a master's degree also in English as a second language or foreign language, I was able to get a job pretty quickly teaching at a couple of the universities I'm in Santa Cruz, California, which is about, oh, you know where it is. And so um, I remember, the San Jose State hired me very quickly. And then at the end of the year, I was expecting that I'd be rehired. And but the students do these what do you call surveys, right? Or evaluations of their teacher. And my evaluation, I think there's a score of 1 to 5. All of them were 4s, and a few of them were 5s. Or I don't know how many, but some were 5s, some were. So they called me and they said, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to let you go. I said, well, why? They said, because, you didn't score high enough, and that was the first time, and I think the last time I was ever fired from a job. And then I was really my ego was really crushed. And about 2 weeks later, one of my fellow teachers there called me and he said, "Hey, don't feel so bad. They never intended to hire you for more than a year because you were just taking someone who was on sabbatical's place." So that's why I'm afraid that Dundrup might fire me for the same reason. I'm not really afraid. Okay. So when we come to this situation we're in now, we're talking about sentient beings or living beings, right? And this is in terms of a human being, but it tends, well, I don't want to say it follows it, but in terms of a human being and animals, we can mostly say that they're constructed. There's one way of articulating the construction of a human being. Okay? And so what we talk about in a human, and we mentioned it earlier, is that uh, one way, this is just a schematic, this is a common way that in Buddhist psychology and Buddhist theory, that they begin to, talk about breaking down what is a living being, or what is a human being in this case. So a living being, a human being, is composed in this articulation of five different groups. So all of us sitting here have these five groups. Have you had this teaching before, explanation before? They often in the Sanskrit word they call them as skandhas, but it just means a group. So the only one that's formed there is the physical body. So it breaks down into we are constituted as a body and a mind. That's the easiest way to say it. Okay, a body and a mind. Okay, that's what we are. And then there's a lot of different ways and all this, by the way, have definitions. The physical body is broken down into its various constituents. You can study all that stuff if it's interesting to you. You know, and then in terms of now the mind, they're going to give us a little breakdown of ways of understanding the mind's function, or the mind, the way it exists. And first, there is feeling. And this is not the feeling like I feel, well, doesn't mean it literally. I feel good about this, or I feel happy when, I'm able to see my kids. And that is feeling, but here feeling is really pretty much more defined as sensation. Okay? When we do almost any mental experience, perception is going to have a sensation accompanying it. Now, naturally, these sensations are extremely subtle. So when we get to the point of like feeling sad, say, feeling sad is sort of a gross feeling. It's not even a feeling, by the way, okay, according to this description. So the feeling sad is going to come under that fourth one, compositional factors. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So the feeling sad happened through the interconnection of these various functions of the mind. These functions are going on most of the time for us, all the time for us, really. Now they may be in a very subtle state, but they're always going on in any experience, I should say. And we're always experiencing, by the way. Okay, so then discrimination is a function of the mind that says, don't walk into that chair, and there's a chair there, right? That's sort of a discriminating quality. If we didn't have that quote unquote discernment or discrimination, we wouldn't be able to notice, recognize the differences in things. Okay? Compositional factors we're going to go into that in a minute, are different qualities of the mind. Okay? And consciousness, or consciousnesses, of which they're broken into 6 different consciousnesses. Okay? So these 6 consciousnesses correspond to the 5 sense organs and the mental sense. Okay? So with our hearing power, our hearing capacity, there is a hearing consciousness. With our seeing power, there is a sight consciousness. With our smell, is that olfactory? Is that what that is? Smell power is a smell consciousness, olfactory consciousness. With the taste, what is taste called?
Gustatory.
Gustatory, thank you. That's a great word.
It's my
With
favorite word.
I've never used it. With our gustatory power of the tongue is a gustatory consciousness. With our tactile power, which is through the skin and through the skin and the not the skin, because also you can feel things inside your body. That is experienced by the tactile consciousness. So, which is interesting because one consciousness can't function in the realm of another consciousness. It's their own individual power. That's why when we lose our sight, our ears, our hearing can't see things. Okay. Now the sixth one is kind of hard to label, but we'll just say the mental sense. What this means it's the best way to, I think, to explain it is when you're asleep at night and you're dreaming and you're having that experience, that's the mental sense that's perceiving that. Okay, it's not the other five senses are dormant for the most part. Okay? And this mental sense also is what it gets developed in clairvoyance and things like that. Okay? The other senses also can become extremely heightened to the same kind of subtlety, the clairvoyance. Like for example, one can develop their hearing sense and hearing consciousness to the point where you can hear sounds thousands of miles away and that sort of thing. And same with with all the other senses. Where it says mental factors 51, feeling and discrimination are part of those 51. They just get separated because of their unique function, that they're basically functioning all the time. There are other ones that are functioning all the time too. I don't know why these two got separated. I think it's just because of their importance. Any questions?
I have a question.
Good. I
Um,
love questions.
when someone in the consciousness, the different consciousnesses, if someone were to lose their sight, someone who doesn't, they have a seems like an elevated sense of the other. Would you
Yeah.
consider that mental sense, or would you still consider that, let's say, it's hearing that has the heightened sense? Would that still be hearing consciousness?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I could think about it more, maybe other examples. Because if they're heightened for that blind person, could they hear those heightened sounds without an ear? I don't think so, right? I'm not talking about when they're dreaming, of course, because even the blind person has visual experience in dreams, I believe. That's because the mental sense is operating as a visual sense, as a visual experience, right? I really don't know, actually. Does anyone know how blind people dream? It's an interesting question. I'd like to find out. I think probably really would be interesting is blind from birth. What they're dreaming in a sense like. That'd be very fascinating. Yeah. Oh, I mean, we could go into that, but I'm going to avoid it for now. But I am curious too. Okay. So that's the human being or living being. That's the person. And so again, going back to the mind is clear like the sky, okay? But it's obscured. Okay, it's obscured by afflictions, delusions, mental disorders, thoughts, feelings. But for the most part, in terms of the definitive sense, it's obscured by the afflictions or the mental disorders or the delusions. Okay, so this is again what gives us hope, because they are not the nature of the mind itself. We can rid the mind of these afflictions. Remember, your up and down emotions are like clouds in the sky. Beyond them, the real, basic human nature is clear and pure. That clear and pure becomes an object of meditation. Okay? But I mean, I don't want to, yeah, that becomes with a lot of, um, you know, instructions around it. It's just not, yeah. But that is where we get into um, things like Mahamudra and Dzogchen and also Tantra, but also on the Mahayana, the Sutra level, the clear and pure is an object of meditation. And actually meditating on the clear and pure nature of the mind helps to a couple of things. One, it helps to develop single pointed concentration. It's a stronger object to help develop that, and it also helps to subdue the mind, the afflictions themselves. Not permanently necessarily, but when one has an experience of the clear, pure nature of the mind, that the afflictions automatically begin to become much more subdued. And the more you meditate, and then they have a lot less effect on your quality of being. It doesn't mean they've gone away necessarily. That's a different story. That comes through meditative practice, of course. So obscured by afflictions, delusions, mental. Okay, another way, our topic of samsara and nirvana, and I'm again being a little general. What we could say is samsara are all these afflictions, delusions, mental disorders that occupy the mind. A Buddha or enlightened being does not have these. So a Buddha does not have jealousy arise in his or her mind. A Buddha does not have anger, irritability, annoyance arise in his or her mind, because they don't exist anymore. But the Buddha is a being, he still has his mind, but it's rid itself of samsara. It's liberated from these afflictions, delusions, and mental disorders. And of course, what I'm presenting here, we could talk about, I don't know, weeks and weeks. There's many, many, many texts that go into the details of what it means to be an enlightened being and what his mind is like and that sort of thing. But for us kind of beginners, it's not just a beginning thing, it's actually quite advanced to be able to think about what would the mind be like if it didn't have these disturbing emotions. Now, on a relative plane as well, the mind also has less disturbing emotions and also non-disturbing emotions, such as love and compassion, patience, fortitude. Those are mental states, but the effect of those is they don't disturb the mind. So another way of talking about samsara is that it's a disturbed mind. It's an unsettled mind. Okay? It's a mind that's not free. It's a mind that's not in control. Simple way of saying is like, sometimes when we feel really, really good and positive and really up, and if I said to you, okay, everyone has that experience, until we meet next week, I want you to stay in that experience for 1 week until we meet again. That is proof of samsara. That's a better way of thinking about samsara. The mind itself is samsara, not out there in the world. It's the mind itself that is samsara. It's the mind itself that is the pure realms. It's the mind itself that is enlightened. It's the mind itself that goes to hell and manifests as a hell experience, as a spiriting experience, as an animal experience. An animal, our dogs or cats, raccoons, they all have a mind that's clear also. But the level of obscuration is more intense for them than it is for us, because they have no capacity to be self-reflective and say, oh, I have a raccoon mind, and it's full of wanting to, kill little dogs and cats and find rummage through rubbish and all that. It can't break out of that mental activity. The beauty of a human being is that we can. And in your earlier modules, when you talked about the precious or perfect human rebirth, that actually means the person who can actually cut through and overcome and see those afflictions and delusions and mental disorders. Now, interestingly, if you just observe someone in the throes of drug addiction, or a schizophrenic, or someone having a bipolar experience, a manic phase, in a way, they don't have a precious human rebirth right then, do they? Because they don't have the capacity to control the mind. As simple as that. They don't have the capacity for the reflective quality of seeing the mind as separate from the afflictions. And again, I'm generalizing, but just to give some power to the point. So samsara, and so when we talk about the precious human rebirth, how lucky we are lucky. We have a precious human rebirth by virtue of the fact that we're sitting here talking about this and reflecting on it. I'm not saying that people who are not here don't have a precious or perfect human rebirth, but now probably the majority have the potential for one, but they're not exercising it, either because they didn't come in touch with these ideas or they're just whatever. And then there's a quality of person that doesn't even presented the ideas, cannot access them, because basically they're in a human body, but their mind is almost like, in another realm, a lower realm. And there's people whose minds are in an upper realm too, in a God realm, because their minds are totally absorbed, maybe in deep concentration and experiencing deep bliss and pleasure, right? Trying to look at. Okay, got a few minutes. Hey, Dunda, am I covering the material or not? Phew. Okay, I'll go through a few more. So here we go. This is another repeat of that other. Oh, so the mind consciousness, I already explained. So there you have it. Mental consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness. The body consciousness experiences the body's sensations and experiences, right? The tactile. The tongue consciousness experiences tastes. And you can go into the text and they describe how many different kinds of tastes there are. Nose consciousness, how many different kinds of aromas there are. Ear consciousness, how many different kinds of sounds. Very fascinating. Eye consciousness, sometimes they talk about the eye consciousness perceives sights, right? And mostly forms. And it sometimes talks about, of course, they can experience the different colors, and they talk about define all the different colors. But one way of talking about the eye consciousness, it experiences things generally uh, generally shape and color. Generally shape and color. What about mental disorders now? We're going to go see there's compositional factors. Okay, mental disorders. Okay. There we have that again. So mind as the 6 consciousnesses, the 51 mental factors, of which feelings is one, but they extract it out for feelings. There are 3 kinds of feelings or sensations. There are pleasant or agreeable sensations. There are disagreeable sensations, and there are neutral sensations. And neutral is something like sitting in your room right now. Maybe you're not aware of the, excuse me, of the air on your face or something. But there, it's quite likely that the mind is experiencing it, but it's so subtle, and it's neither pleasurable or not pleasurable, something like that. It's just neutral. Okay. So the way it works is, and this is what Cynthia, where I was thinking when you were asking about the blind person. For any experience, for us humans, and basically I think it's all living beings, there has to be a consciousness, there has to be a sense organ, and there has to be an object. When you have those 3, you have a perception or you have an experience. If you have an eye consciousness and you have a sense organ, the eye, but no object, as in the sense maybe you close your eyes, there's no experience or no perception of sight. If you have a sense organ, right, and you have an object, but you don't have a consciousness, there's no experience of sight or whatever. So when you pop out an eyeball and you go into pop out an eyeball and you put a flower in front of it, there's no experience because there's no consciousness. And then again, you can have a consciousness, a mind. You put a flower there, which is an object. There's no experience of it because there's no sense organ in the sense of being blind or whatever you want, having your ears cut off or whatever. Okay? That is an experience. That's a perception. You have to have those 3. You have to have those 3. I think, okay, we have about 5 minutes. I just want to check in with you. Um, so, mhm. What happens, I'll go one more slide because I think I want to leave you with, so that's a perception. Oh, I know. So you see this, in a sense, excuse me, going back to our earlier discussion about uh, impermanence. Okay, so you see how this process is interdependent? So I know what I was going to say. So my question, and I want you to respond if you can, if you're not afraid to. Um, when we look, like you're looking at something now in your room, or when you look at a flower, okay, or when you experience someone's voice, where is the voice? Sorry, I want to say, where is the experience of the voice? Is it in your ear? In my case, is it in my voice that you're hearing? Or is it in your ear consciousness or in your mind? Where is the experience?
It gets in
Yeah.
your mental consciousness, which is
It is.
interpreting the sensory input.
Okay. So the experience is not in the sense and not in the object, but in the mind itself, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think it's both in the
Okay.
ear and in the mind.
Okay. Anybody else? So if it's both the ear and the mind, that means the ear is experiencing the sound of my voice the same way the mind is?
Not necessarily, because there are times when two or three people will see or hear the same thing and experience it differently. So,
Right.
no,
Right. So the experience is where?
both the mind and the sensory organ.
So the sensory organ, just this is debate, by the way. I'm trying to be very
Mhm.
gentle about it. In the monasteries, they're just brutal, but they're polite. Um, so that means that the experience is in the ear as well as the consciousness?
I think we're experiencing it because we hear it,
Right. So when you say, I hear the
but
sound,
there's like a vibration in the inner ear that's
that's
occurring.
right.
But
Right.
then there's also an emotion or a thought process or something that's happening within the brain, and then but then there's also something that happens in the mind. So
Mhm. So if the sound is if it's a sweet sound, the ear experiences it as a sweet sound?
no, I think it's just a tool.
Ah, now I didn't say so. I already gave you the hint that all these experiences with the senses are interdependent. I said that, right? Without an ear, you don't have a sound. You don't have an experience of a sound. But I'm wondering where the experience resides. So let me give you an example. If you look at a flower, a red flower, and someone says, "What a beautiful flower." Is the beauty of the flower in the flower, the object? Is the beauty
But
of the flower? Yeah, go ahead.
when we
Sorry.
oh sorry.
Go ahead.
When we say experience, aren't we dis well, I'm gonna use the word discrimination. I don't know if that's the same, but aren't we like discriminating, saying, "Oh, is this a flower I like or not?" Right? There's that
Okay.
based on past experience.
That's the next slide, which you don't get till next week. Of course, yeah, there's more that's going on than bare experience. What we're describing here is bare experience. Okay, just that's one of the words they use, bare or raw experience. Okay, but it never stays that way. So let's leave that for a second. And just when you see a red flower, where is that experienced? So I think
The
so. You
eye.
think about that this week. Think about that, and I'll leave you a little provocation. Uh, oh no, I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm asking you to pay attention to let's just say five senses. You can do six, but five senses, and start paying attention to what let's say our hub, natural way of thinking about our experience is. Does that make sense? What is our programmed way that we see experience, that we believe in experience? It's very important. Please you have to do this one little homework, okay? You can jot down a few bullet points or whatever. Take a week to do it, and then Dundrup doesn't have to give you the quiz next week. No, but I'm very good. This is an object of discussion. I want to, generative dialogue, not just discussion, but it's a meditation. And if you do have a meditation practice, What I'd like to ask you to do is I'd like you to analyze very gently how experience is, where is experience happening? And I'll give you a prompt. My meditation room is not far from, I live in a very rural area, but I still have, cars go by. So my question to you, so when a car goes by, I get like a little bit agitated or whatever. My question to you is find and sorry, probably with your hearing, pay attention to sounds in your meditation, particularly ones maybe that you find distracting or whatever. And I want you to analyze, where is that experience? Where is that sound? Actually, where is that sound? Don't answer it quickly. I want you to examine it in your meditation. This is analytical meditation. It's not about becoming single point of concentration or watching the breath. This is analytical, which is very unique to our Tibetan tradition, and it's not really taught as it'll become more popular. But when we talk about meditation in the Western or modern world, they're always talking about mindfulness and single point of concentration. They don't. The idea of analytical meditation is not really promoted or understood at all. Amongst us, it is. But so this is an analytical meditation where I don't want you to have the answer. Okay, this is very, very important. I don't want you to have the answer. I want you to watch and have the answer revealed and dissected and deconstructed. I want you to really experience the answer, not answer the answer. Does that make sense? So I don't care as much about the verbal answer. I want the experiential answer. Okay? And there's no failing at this test, by the way. The only failing is if you don't do it at least for 30 seconds between now and next week. Okay? Dundubla, the passing of the quiz is only if they did it for at least 30 seconds. Okay? And I didn't take notes, but Dundula, can you please remind me of this instruction next week if I don't remember? And we'll go from there. Any questions you'd like to just conclude on, or any statements, comments, anything else like that?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yep. I will find I know myself well enough. I will find myself very stuck in a position that my sensory experience is my mind, full stop.
Mhm.
So you're asking me to question that, and I don't know how to set aside this presumption that I have. Do you have any advice on that?
What? Yeah, that I understand that. And that's a big hindrance for a lot of us in actual meditation practice. What you do is you have the assumption. Don't try and get rid of it. But don't have a dialogue about the assumption. It's a little bit like having dead flowers in your room. Just leave them there for now. Okay? And try to go to the raw experience. And the way to do that, Jai, is to take something that's happening in the moment and not answering it conceptually. And maybe that's a better way to say it. So I want everyone to hear that. I'm not asking for a conceptual answer. I'm asking for an experiential answer. And it could be so stupid and so basic and so like maybe nothing, then that's fine. But to go with the conceptual answer that you've rehearsed and studied, Jai, is an obstacle for us now. That was learning. Now I want you to learn experientially. I hope that's helpful. Don't fight it. Just let it sit on the side like old flowers.
Okay, I'll work on it. Thank
Okay,
you.
let me know how you go.
Yeah.
Let me know if you get even a little crack in that is success. Because that voice, that conceptual reply is our intellect, right? And the intellect gets very stale. Can get stale. Is that how you feel it? Kind of like that?
Well, I'm very attached to my intellect. I think that's fair to
Oh,
say.
well, good. But the intellect is a great tool, and then for us, it gets completely in the way of experience. I want you to just experience, and I don't, you know what might happen? Something completely different, because it's just experience. And you may have an experience that doesn't have, at all speak to what I'm referring to or instructing. That is fine. I don't care. I just want to go into experience. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
all. And I didn't motivate in the beginning, but we're here together. And in terms of motivation, it's just mainly we're here because we're interested in improving ourselves. And in terms of a dedication, it's the same as a motivation, really. So I just want to say that we're here to improve ourselves. Why? Because we know there's more to the mind than what we're living with. And we're here because we want to improve that quality. Deep in our hearts, we know that there's a quality of mind that's very exalted, awakened, and pure. And then just to be sure, you just sit with that and feel like you're sitting in your training, like doctors, or interns go into training. They know they're going to come out and work in a hospital and try and help people. That's our attitude. We're sitting here together, not just because I want to help me, because I really do care about the world and I do care about my brothers and sisters. And I can see they're not as lucky as me. And so I'm going to do everything I can to use these ideas and betterment and these practices so that I can also help them. Because without that, we can't help them much. Okay, thank you so much. Good group. See you next week.